Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. This is Chris Parker. And today I am with Ryan Fuller, who is the CEO of Ghostcast, amongst other companies. And I am an early user of Ghostcast. And I've spoken with Ryan before, and I'm really eager to pick his brain a bit more on how that platform has been developing and where it's going, and also what it can mean for this podcast. So we're going to get into what is Ghostcast and who is Ryan, and what it can mean to me as a podcaster and other podcasters and people who want to share on social. So Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time from California. Can you share with us, what is it that you do and why do you do what you do?
I'm an entrepreneur, and thanks for having me, Chris. I'm an entrepreneur. Always been sort of driven by that need to want to create products for people. And, Ghostcast is sort of the current endeavor that I dump 24/7 of my life into. And, it's interesting. When Ghostcast came to me, I was leaving another company that I was a co-founder there and the creator of the product there. And I kind of thought, what's next for me? Like, what's the next big project? And this was one of those things that kind of fell in my lap. The group of guys that were sort of building this out in the early days kind of followed and tracked what I was doing at my last company. And, without them really knowing, they came to me and said, hey, we're looking for someone to like you to join the company and kind of really be a part of it, be like a co-founder to it and really help propel this thing. And I was signing my exit deal for my last company, like about in a 1 week window. So, just by them taking the initiative to ask, by me taking the initiative to not just take a year off of vacations, I found myself sort of deep diving into Ghostcast, and now it's probably been about a year and a half of just hard development, building the team, getting content creators onto our platform, just the whole experience, but fun. And then of course we're doing this all through COVID, which is another interesting sort of tale in itself.
And Ryan, you started that with an entrepreneur who, I think you said, create new products or bring new products to market, or why is that important? So how did that happen for you, that actually creating new products, launching new products is something that inspires you to spend 24/7 on it?
I've only ever had one job in my life. In my early 20s, I worked for Oakley, big sunglass company. And I thought it was a great place. When you're in your early 20s, you travel all over the place with them, which I did. And, they had this sort of idea that everybody that worked at Oakley at the time, before they got purchased by a larger company, that this was sort of the non-corporate corporate. These were the group of guys who would probably fail in real corporate world, the creatives of the world, the people who kind of lived outside the box, and they were able to sort of exist in Oakley. And that was their way of putting it. And I always found that to be intriguing. And then, of course, once I left Oakley, I learned a lot of skills. And I think those skills translated into, how can I just do this for myself? How can I make a living doing this for myself? And so that flips into an agency. Like, a lot of people leave to create an agency, and that's exactly what I did. And then, of course, when you work for a lot of different companies, hundreds of different companies doing all of their stuff, you realize that I have ideas too. And I not only have ideas, but I have all the wherewithal to execute all this stuff because I'm helping them execute all their stuff. So you just figure that that's just a much simpler path, is to create products, to create things from scratch. Now, we had all the knowledge, right? We have a team of developers, we have marketing experts, right? We've kind of been through the raising money process, all the things that you kind of have to learn. We've learned it: business plans, financials. When you run an agency, you know who to work with, who not to work with, how quick it should be, how much money does it cost. It's probably the best sort of school and training session to figure out, like, how do I do this myself? And once you then take the leap to bet on yourself and do it yourself, I mean, there really is no turning back. You can't. I don't think I could really it'd be hard. It'd have to be really interesting for me to go ever work for another company.
That leap, you said it so casually. However, that is potentially a giant leap. I mean, if you have those capabilities and resources, but they're still working for the man in a different context, you're still sending invoices to a client, and then taking that capability and pointing it at your own product, that is a risk. And you mentioned earlier that, you're taking some risks. How did you take that leap? Meaning, was that just a let's jump, or was it something that was strategically analyzed? And I'm also asking if you have advice for people who are considering to take the leap.
It was probably a few things. It was who I took the leap with. That was a big piece of it. One of my clients in the past was one of the guys I took the leap with. I knew him since I was in my 20s. He kind of helped, provide me work for my agency in the early days of the agency. Got to know him really well as a person. And, and I think his business was kind of sunsetting. Mine was going along just fine. So I'll tell you what it was, the camera company, right? I made this camera, this tiny little, GoPro camera that's ultra tiny. And, being a filmmaker in my youth and, in the back of my mind, since I did work at Oakley, Jim Gennard, the CEO of Oakley, right when I was there, he was just doing all the pre-development for Red, the camera company Red. And so I got to kind of see the beginnings of Red. And for me, I'm like, okay, like I get it. Now he's a, billionaire, and he's starting his own camera company, and he walks around smoking big cigars. He's a really fascinating guy. But I'm watching it, right? And they're letting me borrow cameras, early cameras. I'm shooting with $100,000 cameras, just having a great time. And as time goes on, GoPro comes out, and I go, okay, like there's a camera that doesn't take a $1 trillion to invent. It's a tiny little camera. And at some point in my career, it was just like one day, like wanting to make a movie one day I will make a camera. And so even before I took the leap, I was already kind of putting the stuff, into play. I was like designing some CAD designs for an early camera. I was showing it to friends. He was one of those friends I showed it to. And I had the mindset that even though I was still deep in the agency side of things, that, my side project was going to be do a camera. And it just came to one of those things where he's just like, I want to do this camera. I have like an idea to make it a little bit different. Here's the idea. What do you think? I said, that's brilliant. And within a week, we kind of completely shut down the past and gave up on everything to just do this. And when I look back, I'm trying to think if I thought it felt so right that I didn't think it was that big of a risk. There wasn't a lot of people going, oh my gosh, you're going to give up an agency that you've been running for 15 years as the CEO. Like, you have all that history. And as a matter of fact, the year we started, we just got named one of the best companies for entrepreneur.com. And so we had like awards, and I'm like, yes, I think this is a way to kind of, it reminds me of Michael Jordan wanting to play baseball. Everybody's like, and not that I was Michael Jordan, but everybody's like, are you freaking crazy? You want to leave basketball to go play baseball? And at the end of the day, he's like, it's just, I'll regret it if I don't do it. And this was my thing. Like, I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I stuck with the safe agency thing and the very kind of work with all the corporate companies. No, I did something that was 100% our own. And then that was its own experience. But so I never looked at it like a desperate kind of, me and my wife have been together for 20 years. That's another thing that happened last year. We hit our 20-year mark. And I never looked at her like, she never looked at me like, what the heck are you doing? You're throwing all that away to do what now? It's just none of that happened. Everything was positive. Everything was forward momentum. Everything was optimistic about what we were going to create and what we were going to do, and ran with it. So,
and give us a few words about the OpKicks story before we get into Ghostcast, because that seems to be maybe that was your bucket list thing that you ticked off and succeeded in that, and now you're on the next challenge. So what was the purpose of OpKicks? Like, why did the world need a little micro camera, and what has happened to it?
So a few things. There's a style aspect to seeing people wear GoPros. You see someone wear a GoPro. It's this massive kind of chunky piece of equipment on top of their head. Strangely enough, they're on like their 9th or 10th camera, and they made it bigger. We just kept thinking, this big chunky piece of equipment, like how do we make this stylish? Like how do we make it so that one, maybe it doesn't so much look like you're always wearing a camera, but if you were wearing a camera at a concert, say as a celebrity, at like an event, that's you're not like, look at this goofy guy. And I've seen people wear GoPros in the goofiest ways possible. Me and my wife were on a trip to Hawaii. There was this kind of overweight gentleman. We went to this place where you kind of dive off this waterfall thing into a pond below. And he took his shirt off, and he had this like chest harness for the GoPro, but it's on his bare skin, and I remember just glancing over at him and I'm like, it looks like he's wearing some kind of kinky apparatus, and then he like, kind of belly dives into the water, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that's embarrassing. And that looks terrible. And I can't believe people adorn themselves with like these big chunky cameras. So, that was kind of the start. It was like, how small can we make this? How stylish can we make this? If, a designer, a clothing designer, a dress designer, Apple were to say, hey, we want to make a camera, what would Apple do? That was one of the biggest things was how would Apple make a camera? How would it, the form and function be? What would the case look like, right? That's why the case is so sleek and, iPod-y. But it was just how cool can a camera be and still kind of hold its, quality and this is a single block of aluminum, so you can run it over with a car and it's still fine. And, how can you maintain, we have sapphire glass, so you can't scratch the front of it. It's waterproof as is. You can just go scuba diving with it or whatever you want. And how do we kind of just reinvent? If you look at GoPro's history, it's kind of a similar camera for a decade. Yeah. And at some point, somebody's got to come along. And whether Opkick goes on to be the greatest company in the planet, I like to think that if you're a product creator, if you added to changing how people view that object, and so, like how small and wearable can a camera be, kind of changes how maybe GoPro thinks of a future version. That's a win to me. It's like you play a part in the history of the development of something, like Elon Musk in cars, right? Like he's going to play a part in the development from gas cars to electric cars. And I like to think I somewhat contributed that to a small extent into cameras, which is my personal passion. So, and
your LinkedIn says you did that for almost 6 years. So
yeah, I'm still co-chair. I still co-chair the board. We're still, we got through a chunk of my exit, but we still have a little bit to do. Mm-hmm. And then of course COVID hit, and that slowed just everybody's business down. And they're the same way.
So from camera, I love it. And another little, before we started, I was telling you about, filmmaking, and GoPro does have a role in the world, because when you're talking about GoPros, what our creative team did is we had to fake a crash scene, and of course, very low budget. And so we had these Apes, which are these little 3-wheeled Italian vehicles. And one of these Apes is actually a character in our movie. But we needed to crash it. But of course, we didn't want to crash the real one. So we had a bit of a scrappy one. And then we attached GoPros all over it and threw it over a bridge. And then, as far as I know, all the GoPros survived. So there's something for that. But it was, but no, it wasn't there for style or looks, or it was just tape it on and pray that we can get the footage out of it when it's done. But so moving from cameras to voice only social media. When I first heard about this from our mutual friend Tuan, I was like, wow, that's cool. I don't get it. And then I think we might have had a call, and then I've been a member and I've posted a bunch of times. It's still evolving. But can you share us what is the mission of Ghostcast, and why does the world need that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I listen to podcasts, you create podcasts, and I'm assuming you listen to podcasts as well. I'm also a consumer of YouTube videos. I'm a big consumer on Instagram, TikTok, right? I'm a creator on Instagram. I post all my photos. I grow an audience. I kind of, understand the creator space. And honestly, when I think of audio, like I've kind of always been a big fan of audio. The other day I was going through like all my iTunes music, and I've captured, over the past 15, 20 years, however long I've had iTunes, I've kind of collected about 80,000 pieces of music, like individually on my hard drive, not through the streaming service, but just like, songs I chose out or audio pieces of content I chose out. And I remembered I had a massive library of like old 50s style radio shows. And I remember that when I was in high school, I was fascinated by these things. Like I would just sit in my bedroom, in my early days of high school, just listening to like suspense theater on CBS, from 1934, and just hearing these sort of audio plays play out. And I thought, why don't we have that these days? Like I was into it as a high school kid. And how come there's no like modern version of sort of these like, audio plays and people getting really creative and doing like Halloween versions and Christmas stories and, suspense tales and all this stuff. We've kind of turned podcasting, I feel like, into either interviewing and answering questions, sort of opinion-based talk show, or like sort of a documentary style. Let's dive into, why this murder happened or why this is happening politically or, that. But the entertainment side of things has kind of been shifted over to like TikTok, where people get really, really creative doing video skits and entertaining you. So what we started doing is we started sort of seeing some audio creators that post on TikTok, and we're like, if you stripped away the video, you lose nothing. And that if you listen to the audio, there's something different there. There's something interesting there. And with like the explosion of podcasting, we're like, nobody's touching this space, right? Everyone's just kind of doing the same thing. And so, and then also looking at Apple podcasting, looking at Google, seeing what Spotify's been doing. I'll use Apple as the best example. Apple's not a social media platform, right? Like if you go put your podcast up there, it's more like I'd say it's more like a Netflix, right? Something that you pay for. You consume content, you download it, you just listen to it. That's it. No engagement, no commenting, no communities. It's not open to everybody. Like if you're not like if you're not following all their guidelines, you're not posting. And their system is set up in a way, if you're not marketing it, no one's probably going to listen to you. So we thought it needs to be more like social media. You need to be able to take someone like on TikTok, who you can take an obscure person, but they do something good, and the system promotes them to other people and allows people to engage with those people. And that just doesn't exist for audio. And so that's sort of what it's becoming. And as we dive deeper, we really just listen to like the kids who use our platform, and we just go, what do you want? Like, what feature do you want? And they go, oh, I would love this feature. And we're like, all right, we just built that for you. So it's really kind of now being driven by, the people who find it so fascinating, and we're allowing them to do that, which I think is important because they're the users.
Who are these users? You said kids. Is it?
Yeah. So, originally one of our developers started like paying some high school kids to just jump on. I think he paid him $50 to do like an hour worth of ghost casting. And there's actually a recent ghost cast from a few of these kids where they're just like, oh, I started this through that like payment thing, and they were paying me to be on the platform, and now they're not paying me anything. And I find myself doing a ghost cast every day. And we're like, okay, that's perfect. And we've seen a lot of people like that. We've seen people that we brought on as sort of influencers, people from TikTok who are very popular. Maybe they do voice impressions. Maybe they do audio skits, stuff like that. And same thing, they come on the platform, they give it a go. They see people are listening to them live. They see they can do live. They see they can pre-post, and then they get comments in their activity center. Like it feels very familiar to like if you're a creator on YouTube or you're a creator on Instagram or TikTok. Like it's something where they're like, yeah, this isn't this. You just can't do this on Spotify. You can't do this on Apple podcasting. It just doesn't exist. And it's strange that it doesn't exist. We have everyone, I think it got focused on video, for a little while, everyone was, got Twitter with like, text thread style sort of social media content. You have YouTube, which is, can be cinematic, but it's also sort of like this, documenting people's lives, the average YouTuber, it's sort of more documentary style. And it's like, where's the audio for this? It's like, where's the social media sort of audio space where you can just kind of do the YouTube version of audio? It doesn't happen.
You also mentioned, and I saw it on the website of Ghostcast, which I think is ghostcast.io. I
Yep.
think that's where I was again earlier today. And it's the Ghostcast is the first social podcasting platform. And you mentioned that for people out there who, and I would probably say, I can't say half, but maybe a third of the people I talk to and have conversations with on this podcast tell me they want to start a podcast. And I say, then go start a podcast. That's the only way, because we're almost at 100 episodes, and the first ones were not as good as these ones, and the 200th will be better than this one. So just start and go. But what I was delighted to hear that Ghostcast is a place where you can just start. You don't have to worry about all of this stuff. You can just go out there and start sharing your message. How did that evolve, or was that part of the original plan?
It was part of the original plan, and it was sort of it was watching what everything was happening on YouTube. So there's a few things that YouTube has sort of influenced us on, and that is they went through the ad apocalypse. I don't know if you're familiar with the ad apocalypse. It was this time when a lot of YouTube videos weren't able to pull advertisers onto their platforms, so they stopped making money, and they started sort of questioning, as a creator, I'm putting a lot of time and effort, I'm getting a lot of views, I'm making no money. Patreon is born sort of out of that to fill that need. And now Patreon is sort of now taking over, but then YouTube figures, okay, now we have to have our own internal Patreon, right? So there was a lot going on with YouTube, and same thing. A lot of people want to be YouTubers. But the amount of work and effort it takes, how long it takes before you become successful, it's like a year usually or some crazy amount, is a tough situation. But you can look at something like YouTube, and then you could jump over to TikTok. Like, what's the difference between YouTube and TikTok? Like, YouTube to me is like, it's like podcasting. You have to kind of really put together really good content. Maybe it's interview form, maybe it's long form, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And you have to produce it. And to be successful on YouTube, there's a lot of that going on. But to be successful on TikTok, still video, it's both of them are video. YouTube's video, TikTok's video. But why is TikTok so easy? Why, it's like, because take your phone, film yourself dancing, off you go, right? And we're kind of the version of that for audio. Take your phone, talk about whatever you want for a minute or so, or an hour if you want, and off you go. There's no production, there's no big process, and you can just kind of do it on the fly. And so that's kind of the thing that we're feeling. We're just feeling like, I can see how it's working for video. I can see that, podcasting is very popular. Why is this piece missing? And then of course, as we get people on the platform, we just hear it from other people. And, so if they jump on there, that's amazing. And we're like, awesome. Glad we're here.
And a very selfish question, myself as a podcaster and a ghostcaster, when I was ghostcasting more regularly a bit ago, it wasn't clear to me how to combine the two worlds, meaning how can I make the two synergistic? And I have got ideas like, for example, maybe after this conversation, I should post a Ghostcast on, hey, I just had an awesome conversation with Ryan Fuller, and it's about blah, 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 blah. And if you want to know more, go over there. But then they have to go over there, which is kind of a hop that we don't really want. I could also just upload these episodes, but then that might be less authentic, not in style of the platform. What's your vision or advice to take these different worlds and bring them together? Because it's a different experience on Ghostcast.
Yeah. And honestly, we a lot of people go like, oh, does that mean I don't do my podcast? And by all means, no, of course not. Like, you still do your podcast, you still upload it to Apple and Spotify and all this stuff. We're becoming, I think, the piece where, and there's like, we have this comedian on there. His name's AJ Comedy. He does extremely good voice impressions. And I think he kind of puts it in a good way. And it's one way, there's many ways that Ghostcast can kind of fall into. And we're trying not to bucket it into anything, because at the end of the day, it's really whatever the users want it to be for them. But he uses it for like ideas before he posts on TikTok. He'll like run ideas through, he'll do little skits. He'll kind of like pre-plan some stuff. Some people will leave comments, right? And he kind of gets a feel for like, okay, that's good. And then sometimes he fully blown just goes on and actually does an entire skit. Like he did one of, politics aside. He does an amazing impression of Donald Trump. And so he does the Donald Trump's locked in his bunker tapes, when they're trying to get him out of the White House. And he just does such a good job at, the wit, the quickness. He records it live on Ghostcast. So while it's going live, all the people that follow him are jumping on and they're like, oh my gosh, this is live. You're doing this right now. He doesn't break character. He goes through the entire thing, and it becomes kind of like one of those hits where he's like, okay, I want to take that audio and I'm going to post it on TikTok. I'm going to post it on this. I'm going to post it on YouTube. I'm going to post it all over the place because it was just so brilliant. But it was that, he did not plan that. I think he had a rough idea in his head, and he was just able to just do it live on Ghostcast, and it became something. So that kind of quick, kind of side of things, like even this podcast, right? You've prepared for it. You look me up, you have questions in mind, you kind of have a time frame you want to do. It's very organized. We scheduled this on a computer, on a calendar, so I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's great. And that should always still be a piece of it. And over time, we'll probably want some of that piece on Ghostcast as well. But for the young kids who just want to tell a story about, like, we had this one college kid who goes to Notre Dame, and he just rambles on about a story about how he was trying to sneak shooters into the game and got caught by security. And, it's like a 3-minute story, but it's telling, it's funny, it's insightful to the college experience from a kid who's living it. And one day when that kid's older, Ghostcast will still be kicking, and he'll be like, that was a story captured at the time. And he's not a YouTuber. He's not a, content creator. He's hardly an Instagrammer. And he goes on TikTok, but he's not like a creator, because that's having to put his face on video, which for some people is tough, right? Some people just want to speak. Much simpler. So especially like this too, right? It's like, oh, we're on camera. We're being recorded. So got to make sure we don't like do anything, we pick our nose or do anything weird. Does my hair look okay? Is lighting good?
I would actually wish you would pick your nose, just because.
Make it normal.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm dreams I had with Ghostcast is also to play ping pong with people. And I think maybe we emailed about that, or maybe with Tuan, that if you're on a channel, and for people, could go download Ghostcast. It's an app. And one of the things I'm proud of, thank you, Ryan, for your work. There's an Everyday Entrepreneur Everywhere card. There's a space in there for which I've posted a bunch of times. I would love it if people post comments maybe about this conversation in the Everyday Entrepreneur Everywhere card in Ghostcast. And if you got questions, and then one of the things I liked about when I was posting, because essentially you're there, you say, I want to publish Ghostcast, you can give it a name, press go, then you start talking. But then you can also, because I'm looking at my phone, I can also see when people are interacting. So if it's kind of cool, you get a little heart or a little question, and you're like, oh, human, there's somebody's out there, and then you can actually respond to it. And that's that for me was sort of maybe the endorphin kick, was kind of like, oh, that's cool. And it was sort of enticing to come back. So, but I imagine people can have conversations over Ghostcast on different cards about stuff. And so I would invite people, go try it, because this is a new medium that, as Ryan is saying, there is a place for this, and it's evolving into it. So if you're interested in new innovation and new modes of communication, go try it. So, and please leave us a comment or something like that. So have you seen people have these conversations over time about stuff? How does that work?
It depends who's the creator, right? Like, it's kind of all social media platforms, right? So we have this guy, Jimmer, who's playing professional basketball right now in China, right in the heart of COVID, right? So we created a Ghostcast original series for him called Jimmer Talks China. And Jimmer has a pretty large fan base. So he's probably one of the people that has the most followers, right? He has the most people show up to a Ghostcast. Hundreds of people show up to a Ghostcast. And they ask questions through the whole time. And sometimes that's the conversation, or is just the questions that the people are asking. Like, he might have an idea of some stuff that he wants to cover, but then the questions start flowing, and that becomes the entire Ghostcast, which is unique, like in the podcasting world. It's just a unique experience, unless you have a call center set up and you have fan base and they're all going to call in with questions. It's like, a regular person can just kind of get those people hey, and what questions do you have? And then people are like, oh, I have this question. And he goes off on a tangent. And that does make it interesting. The part where we're going to bring people together, because that's sort of a feature that we're building right now, where, this, in the future of Ghostcast, we could do this on Ghostcast. And that we're heading in that direction, of course, because of our users want that. So we want to bridge people in.
We'll do this, meaning having a conversation. I'm not sure video is a plan, because that might be, I don't know, but one of the things that was fascinating to hear, and I've been sort of hounding them, is Spotify has, for some of their top podcasters, are publishing videos on Spotify for podcasting. And I've tickled them. The reason that we do video, and again, because Christian Kniga, my dear friend and technical and creative enabler, who's going to edit this and do sound and color correction, and this could not be possible without Christian. We started from our film world, and so and we came this direction. And so it was, for me at least, it was more natural and easy to come this path from video, even though it is intended to be audio, I guess. So yeah, I'd be curious to see how that evolves. But
well, I'll tell you this: I'm a video guy like you. I am fully aware that there's a large percentage of podcasts that are video oriented. So since we are a podcast platform, we'll most likely have video eventually. So
we'll see. But Ryan, we're closely running out of time. But one last question that I've gotten, and unless you have anything else you'd like to bring up or ask, is you mentioned something about 24/7 and being married 20 years, and having other hobbies, photography and traveling. How do you keep yourself going? I mean, how do you keep yourself energized and healthy and on target while you're creating these new things and pulling them out of the ground and bringing them to market? How do you keep going?
You got to find what you enjoy to do in life. And, being a CEO of a company is not always enjoyable. Contracts, legal battles, you experience all those happen. There's almost no way around it. We've been sued before, not at Ghostcast, but in past companies, we've been sued, and you have to battle that and fight that. You have to kick people off the board, right? There's so many things that happen. Interpersonal relationships and businesses is a tough thing to manage. But, for me personally, and this is different for everybody, I'm sure. And I like to think that way these days, is there's no one way to do anything. There's about 1 million ways to do anything. But for me personally, it was identifying, what do I like to do? I like to be in nature. I like to travel. I like to go out into the wilderness and shoot guns. I like to do archery. I like to work out. And, I have a kind of a wide breadth of hobbies, and I fulfill the need to do those hobbies every chance I get. And even for something like staying in shape or being healthy, I built a gym at my house because I found that I just don't have the time to drive down to a gym. So I built out a full-blown gym with every single piece of equipment that you'd ever want, because I knew that going forward, that's just one of those things that you have to do. And then of course, my wife is lucky enough. My wife's an ICU nurse, but we haven't had her work during COVID because of the craziness. But, she knows how to stay healthy. And so I always look to her to say, keep me healthy, because make sure I'm eating the right foods, make sure I'm getting enough protein, make sure that if I'm working too much, that we peel out and head off somewhere. But it's really that self-check of like, what keeps you calm personally. It's different for everybody. And you just have to go after those things, or you'll lose your mind. I've been stressed out before. I've worked too hard. I've been like on the brink of like pulling my hair out, and as everybody, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, I remember thinking with the camera company, I was working 24/7. And I remember thinking, and I was working on weekends, going into the office on weekends when nobody's there. And I remember thinking, after I did all this for 5 years straight, did I have to do that? Would that have made the biggest difference? Would me showing up on weekends have changed the course of the company, or would it kind of went in the similar direction that it's gone into? And I think that it would have. I think that my extra time on weekends probably didn't like flip the entire thing around.
Do you think it could have even gone better if you would have taken that time for yourself and had that reflection moment?
Mentally, for sure, right? Because there was times when there was like at the reason I did my exit, one of it was just fatigue. There was part of it that was fatigue. The other one was sort of a strategic thing that benefits the company. It benefits me, benefits everybody. So it was like, okay, this is a great decision, great timing. Let's do it. But the fatigue thing was real. I mean, we were at CES, and I remember, I was my wife was like, "You're freaking out right now." Like, and I'm like, I think I am freaking out right now. I think I'm having I'm not like a panic attack guy, but I'm like, I'm freaking out right now. And so when we drove home from CES, we talked for 4.5 hours, and I'm just like, yeah, this is just, how much is too much? How much like devotion, effort, personal passion, starts kind of peeling away who you are as a person. And, there is too much at some point. At some point you just got to take a vacation, and you got to kind of step back, and you got to allow others to lead. And you have to know that, hey, I did everything I did and everything's kind of going really great. Let's let this guy take over this piece. And my guys at Outcase used to tell they're like, Ryan, eventually you have to let like the CMO do the CMO's job. Eventually you kind of have to let the social media guy do the social media's job, because I was doing everything in the early days. And they're right. Eventually you got to kind of hand it and delegate and allow yourself to just, enjoy the moments. So.
Well, Ryan, I've definitely enjoyed this moment. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. With your passion for photography and traveling, I know you're going to Wyoming for a sacred journey. I wish you all the best on that journey, and in addition to your family activities, also your photography activities, and take that time, because that seems like a time of calm and reflection. So it's going to be a while for me to get over to Wyoming again with COVID being stuck in Amsterdam. I guess there's worse places to be stuck. But and if anyone would like to get a hold of Ryan, then ghostcast.io is, and also at least in the Apple App Store, download Ghostcast and check out the Everyday Entrepreneur Everywhere's card in there. I would love it if you, sent me a message or asked me a question. Let's interact there. Maybe if you have a comment or an opinion about this episode, I think that would be very prudent to talk about Ghostcast in Ghostcast. It's kind of meta. And of course, Ryan is on LinkedIn, and you can get that link on the show notes, which are attached to wherever you are listening to this. So Ryan, thank you so much for the time. Very much appreciate it. And I'm proud to be an early user of Ghostcast, and really curious to see how that continues to grow.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Learn more at ebillion.com/podcast.